Let's talk about board reports. Hey and welcome. It's day 44 of our 90-day game plan. As discussed several times in this series, today it's board report day, and I want to talk a bit about how do these board reports work, why are they important, and what should go in it. Next week, we're going to talk about the board meeting. So I'm going to split those two things intentionally. Now, let's talk about the board report. They should happen on a quarterly basis. And obviously, if you're a bit on the smaller side as a company, you're probably gonna want to invest some time into it, but not gonna overdo it. Now, I have been very diligent with board reports, and I actually think it was very, very good in a lot of the disputes that we've been having. Those board reports are really important because they show a bit on what you have been working on, what are your thoughts, and they kind of document a couple of things. And I think that's important, even if there's not so much going on, if the company is still small, and if the organization is still relatively small. So, how do those board reports work in general? Well, first, and that's always the first thing, I kind of task all the department leads. Now, it depends on what are your departments, but for example, this could be product engineering, this could be finance, this could be operations, this can be marketing, this can be whatever departments you have, and you kind of task those leads. Now, obviously, when the group is still very small, it may just be 3 or 4 people, but that's totally fine. You want to task those and reflect on what were the goals for the quarter, how did those goals get achieved or not, what were the outcomes, and what is reflections on that. Why did it not get achieved, why did it get achieved, right? So basically you align this with the OKRs, with the objectives, with the key results, and then the initiatives. Now, you're going to task a little bit how granular, how detailed do you want this? Do you want your team to go into the nitty gritty? Should this be 1 page per department? Should this be 5 pages per department? It really kind of depends a bit on how you task that. You get this, you collate this, and then you as the CEO, you kind of start an intro as a CEO reflection of the quarter. And here you do the exact same thing. You kind of reflect on the big kind of goals. You look at a bit of the what your department leads kind of give you, and you kind of go in there and kind of reflect a bit based on that. So that's kind of that part. Then what your department leads always should be doing is a bit of a preview for the next quarter, right? So you sit down with your department leads, you kind of work through objectives and key results for the upcoming quarter. So you have a reflection and you have a bit of a preview. On the reflection, you look at the past OKRs, did they get achieved or not, and why? What were shortcomings, for example, right? So you kind of base a bit of a story. And then forward looking. And you as the CEO, you do exactly the same thing. Now, then after this, you have the CEO's thoughts, then you have the big bulk of like the summary of the executive team or of the department leads. And then at the end, you have board decisions, you have to-dos, you have things that have to get voted on. And you kind of fill this in at the end. Now, depending on how many board members you have, you may have different suggestions, different proposals, and then you kind of go and walk this through. Now, really key in this, obviously, if you kind of go to your department leads and tell them, hey, this is going to take a full day of yours, well, they're going to get a bit frustrated, especially if the company is still small. But at the same time, I think if you really skip this, good documentation is not there. And also, every once in a while, it makes sense to kind of reflect on those OKRs of the past quarter and reflect a bit on the upcoming quarter. So at the end, it's just really good process, it's good documentation. It shouldn't take too long, especially in the as a young kind of company. And then the length of that board report also depends a bit on how much stuff you put in there, right? Let's say you're very early, let's say there's 5 of you and everyone kind of writes their own little thing. Let's say 1 page is a reflection, half a page is the OKRs for the upcoming quarter, or maybe you do a full page so everyone gets 2 pages. And then, so that's about 10 pages. Then you do maybe 1 to 3 pages. So that's about 13 pages. Maybe you have a small little cover letter. Then you have a few decisions at the end. So we're talking about 15 to 20 pages on the lower end, right? And we have had board reports or board meeting documents with over 100 pages, sometimes even 150 pages, depending on how many decisions, how many additional documents. Obviously, depends a bit on how friendly, how hostile is everything. And at the end, that's really what it comes down to. So, board reports, absolutely crucial. Next week, I'll discuss with you board meetings. So stay tuned for this. Tomorrow, also halftime review. Let's get going. Happy Thursday, everyone. Talk tomorrow. Yours truly, Julian. Bye-bye.